Okay. Well,
we
for
did
my
one a couple of weeks
purposes,
ago. I'm not saying anything ever again.
This is the thing, yeah. Like when the delays this bad, it's really difficult to avoid speaking over one another. So you'll just have to hold on till I literally let you in, Darren. Okay?
yeah, it's 101 for my reckoning, but
Yeah.
who knows how it
Okay.
will turn out on the.
All right. Let me just get my list up. All right. Are we live on YouTube? Yeah.
Yep, I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Stop typing.
Oh,
Good afternoon and welcome to the PC Pro podcast, the professional podcasting outfit that it always is. Apologies to those listening live. We're a couple of minutes late today. I'm going to blame Darian and the vagarities of 4G in Cambridge for this one. But as you can guess, I have with me Darian Gamer-Smith.
Hello there.
Darian's on something with a delay, so if you hear a slight pause between replies, if you're listening live, we can only apologise. And Lee Grant up in Huddersfield.
absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. And we've got a lot to cover today, so we're going to crack straight in, and we've got a lot of AI stuff to cover. Starting with ChatGPT, who have been, or OpenAI, who have been doing their 12 Days of Christmas, which they launched last week, where they're making a new product announcement every day. And they certainly have got off to a bit of a flyer. The opening day, they announced ChatGPT Pro, which, for those of you with a Honeyball size wallets around here, that's a £200 or $200 a month unlimited subscription to ChatGPT. And I mean, you'd have to be using that service a hell of a lot to justify spending 200 quid a month on it. But what they launched alongside that was taking off the preview label on the O1 model. The O1 model is what they call the advanced reasoning model. So it behaves much more like a human in terms of being able to work its way through problems. It iterates its way through problems, thinks in inverted commas much more like a human does than the traditional models. And so not only have they taken a preview off and improved that, they've released a new grade of that called O1 Pro, which is only available to people on this super expensive $200 a month subscription. And they get unlimited access to that. So even if you're a ChatGPT Plus subscriber like I am, you're still currently limited, even without the preview, to I think it's about 50 requests a week on O1 Pro. They don't. I'm sorry, on O1. They don't really specify. It's really very vague, but there is limits on it. With ChatGPT Pro, you can eat as much as you like, effectively. And it's not only the text models that you're going to be able to eat as much as you like of. At least if you're in the United States, you can now do video because we've known about Sora for about 6 months when they first released the previews last summer. And now they've released that to most of the world, the UK and many EU countries excluded. But Sora is their text to video model, where instead of getting a still image, you can now just type a prompt and get a short video clip out the other end. That is available to people on all paying subscriptions, but the people on ChatGPT Pro will get unlimited access to Sora as well. Not over here in the EU at the moment because of regulatory concerns, is what the official line is. It looks like there's some concern over the privacy regulations that we still effectively apply to us because of our law is still pretty much harmonised with the EU. So we're not getting it for a while yet, it seems. Are you super excited for this one, Lee?
Absolutely on the edge of my seat, Barry. No, I'm not. I don't get excited by AI, and I know that's a very uncool thing to say in this podcast. But there's just so much noise going on that a lot of it washes over me. It's not the end of computing that excites me, though. Obviously, I'm very aware that it's an end of computing that will influence my things that goes on. However, once again, it's the old trick, isn't it? It's the you think you've got all you can eat on this subscription, and there's always another subscription. It's straight out the antivirus playbook, isn't it? There's, you think you've got the best you can get, and suddenly there's a new one out that you haven't quite got the right ticket for. You need to spend a bit more on. So it doesn't surprise me that there's going to be people that will decide that they want this, and then will decide that they're going to chuck a bit of extra cash at it. It is a quick evoluting product. Evoluting, that's a great word. I just made that up. Donald Trump can do it. Why can't I? So I think they'll get a few customers for this, but excitement? No, not me, I'm afraid.
Darian?
Yeah, it's hard to quantify is the thing. I mean, there are already so many different chat models out there which have their different strengths and weaknesses. I'm just reading the press release about ChatGPT Pro, and it says O1 Pro mode is a version of O1 that uses more compute to think harder and provide even better answers to the hardest problems. And how are you supposed to know? I mean, what exactly is the advantage here? How do you know if you've got a problem that requires O1 Pro? How do you know, like, what does it mean to think harder? Because we know LLMs don't really think in a meaningful sense anyway. I feel like, it may well be that there is some very real mathematical explanation for what you're getting that's better, but the marketing is an uphill struggle. And like Lee, I mean, I'm still finding it difficult to integrate AI chatbots into my daily life. I just don't. I mean, all of the workflows that I've evolved, that I've grown up with, they don't have space for an AI assistant to go and do this, that, or the other. I know you, Barry, are much more kind of forward-looking in this regard, but for me, I mean, it's already a very much a niche use case, and this is a niche of a niche.
But I mean, like, I can think of one particular use case for you is going through all of those. Well, I guess you don't do labs very often these days, but labs feature tables. I mean, that for starters, just to be able to analyze the data from those would be an enormous benefit of AI, I would imagine.
Well, it's true. I mean, yes, there's lots of kind of donkey work, but I don't trust AI to get it right yet. And maybe that's just me being superstitious and, a bit of a stick in the mud. But it hasn't been long at all since AI was really at the, wrong more often than right stage. And I think it's going to take me a long time to be confident enough to trust a professional task, something which is reputationally important. I mean, the thing about PC Pro, the thing about our labs is that we really do, we hang a lot of our credibility on getting this right and giving you good, informed, accurate advice. And if we start outsourcing that to machines, we need to be 100% confident that they're not going to let us down. And like I said, I'm not there yet.
I must confess, I have been using AI on a PC Pro project. Not for publication before Mr. Danton gets excited, but I let it loose on some of the old podcasts just to extract some information, and I'm guessing it's not very good at that at the moment, because it came up with a whole load of new hosts that we've never met, products which hardware of the week for products that are not even mentioned in the podcast. It was just as you said, it was a point where it was useless. There was no point. So I've gone back to the old way. I thought I might be able to save myself a couple of hours of work, but no.
Yeah, I don't know about scraping through audio. Certainly on that, analyzing data in spreadsheets, though, I've used it a number of times, and I always go back and check, 10-20% of the calculations to make sure that it's doing the right things. And I'm as confident as I can be that if you throw it things like an Excel spreadsheet and ask it to interpret data, the vast majority of the time I find it reliable. It is the more prosaic stuff, or when you're just asking it general knowledge questions, where it tends to wander off the reservation occasionally. But especially in the last year alone, I'd say the accuracy of the answers you get, mainly because ChatGPT is often going online more often than not these days to look up answers before it comes back to you. But in just the sort of general handling, I think it's become much more reliable, if not entirely trustworthy.
Well, that's always the model, isn't it? Because, you go back a long time ago with the advent of SatNav. People, I remember my grandfather, no, I'm never having one of these, bloody useless thing, etc. And, now who buys maps, because
Yeah.
it's come on and it's sort of ingrained itself and it's become so much better. And it's not to say that people still don't end up upside down in a ditch down a dark alley, but it give it time.
So OpenAI is not the only one who've been unveiling some AI adventures this week, Darian.
Adventures. Well,
Adventures.
sort
I don't know
of,
where
yeah.
that word came from. Inventions, should we say?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is Google, who yesterday took the wraps off Gemini 2.0, which is about as inspired a name as ChatGPT Pro. So if you want to try out the latest version of Google's AI, you can go to the Gemini web app right now and click in the top left to switch from 1.5 Flash to 2.0 experimental beta, I think it's called. 2.0's got a couple of new capabilities. It now natively generates audio and images inside the chat session. Perhaps more interestingly is what it will underpin. It can power AI bots that quote go off and do things on your behalf. So, for example, there's a new Chrome extension called Project Mariner where you can which you can tell to go off and do things online for you. There's Jules, which is an agent for checking your code and finding bugs or unwanted behaviors. There's an agent which I think it watches you play video games and gives you advice. And also Gemini 2.0 is going to underpin Google's web results, web search, what comes back when you type something into Google. Web search is increasingly the wrong term. Sorry, I'm stumbling over that because something is kind of searching the web, but it's not really you anymore. You are getting the distilled, crystallized version of that. And I think it was Sundar was talking this week about how web search with Google is going to be a very different experience next year. And I did wonder if this was maybe them acknowledging that if all you get back is AI generated results and you never go to the website where that stuff comes from, that is going to destroy the web. So something has to change. But based on what has been revealed so far with the new version of Gemini, it seems that's not the case.
Yeah, I've not really played with Gemini all that much recently. It's on my phone. It's sort of now the default Google way. But I mean, the few times I've used it, it has been pretty good. And then they launched this last night, and I open the Gemini app on my phone, and it's doing some kind of weird kind of. Let's come in and brainstorm some ideas. So I was asking it, what can I write about for my PC Pro column this morning? And we sort of start this discussion about various advances in tech this year and what it was. And it was, to be fair, it's very convincing in terms of the conversational note. I think they're using the same kind of voice model as they use. What's the service you talked about, Lee?
Where Notebook LM.
Yes, thank you. Where the podcast, and it does sound really natural, and the voice they're using on this kind of let's talk and brainstorm stuff. She's got those same conversational ticks, the little pause like I just used there, that is you just don't expect from an AI model. And actually, it wasn't terrible. So I'm gonna take a more close look at Gemini this week, because it does seem that Google is catching up to some degree here, having been absolutely left in the blocks when ChatGPT first arrived.
Did you notice that, talking about Notebook LM, which I know strictly not on the running order, but we have mentioned it. Did you notice that Spotify have done a bit with it? You can, I saw in Spotify, you could basically, it would discuss your year in review.
Oh no, that's DJ. That's been around for a while.
Oh, I'm old-fashioned, Barry. I don't know these things.
That's actually, but so for those who haven't seen it, so Spotify do their annual Wrapped thing every year, where you get your list of most listened to artists and most listened to songs and albums and this kind of stuff. And this year, alongside it, they've released a sort of DJ version of that, where it's an AI DJ that talks you through your stats. Like, hey Barry, this year you listened to Albo more than any other artist, and you listened to 2,500 hours of music. You're 80% better than the rest of the Spotify crowd out there. It's a real sort of tiny New York accent, but it does. I've actually listened to it for a few hours this week. It's quite interesting to see how it works and holds stuff together. I'm a bit worried I'm becoming a bit too ingrained in this AI world. Barry's from Norfolk, says Ian Rustin. Yes, quite. This is why I'm not a stand-up comedian. So we'll keep an eye on Gemini, but there's the other AI development, or another AI development this week, is the arrival of Apple Intelligence in the UK. So they released iOS 18.2 yesterday and iPad OS 18.2, and that opened up the Apple Intelligence to the UK audience for the first time. You could previously get it by cheating and selecting American English, but this is the first time it's officially supported with UK English languages. What to make of it? So there's various ways, and I've only tested it on iPad so far. I've not got an iPhone to test it with, but on iPad you basically get the smarter version of Siri, so you can now hold down the button and talk to Siri like an AI assistant rather than just the sort of very basic voice commands that it had before. You can type to Siri for the first time, so you double tap at the bottom of the screen and you can type rather than having to do everything verbally. It's linked in with ChatGPT, so you can, if you've got a ChatGPT account, you can sign in and use it as you would, I guess, using the voice commands on ChatGPT, but via the Siri interface rather than having to open the ChatGPT app. And then there are various little AI tools dotted throughout the operating system. So, for example, in Mail, you can now, if you've got a long email, you can just press a button at the top and get a summary of it. Your notifications can now appear with summaries if you choose. So if you've got 5 different emails, the Gmail icon should say, you know, Lee's running late, Darian's on a crap 4G connection, can we sell you a new laptop on Amazon, whatever. It just shortens it all up into sort of condensed items that make it easier to read. There's also this thing, forgive me because I've not got it in front of me, called Playground, where it allows you to create sort of emojis. I think they call them Gymojis. Apple bloody stupid names. But they basically take a picture from your photo library and you can say, turn it into a cartoon character that, you pop into chats. That kind of thing really does leave me entirely cold, although I have to say it did a very good job on 2 or 3 I tried in terms of actually capturing the facial characteristics and turning them into emojis. But so far, I don't know if either of you two have tried it, but I'm pretty underwhelmed by Apple Intelligence. Lee, have you seen it?
I have not seen it. I presume I've got the new iPad Air, so I presume I can get that, but I haven't been offered it yet, so I haven't looked. But the emoji app will absolutely entertain my children for hours. So I just, because on the previous version you could take basically an image and it would turn it into a sticker. So if I took a photo of you, Barry, and press the right buttons, it would turn into a sticker which I could use as a heart or a thumbs up as emoji. This new version sort of do like some graphical styling sort of and redraw you as an emoji, or have I misunderstood?
Yeah, it will, because you can do, it only turns you into a cartoon character, but you can say things like, make me wear a wizard's hat, or put me in a panda suit or something, whatever you like.
This is far more exciting to me than any of the AI stuff put together. The fact that it could turn me into a unicorn, I'm in. I will report back next week.
Darian, have you had a dangle with it yet?
No, I'm sorry. I'm that weird person who uses a Mac for my desktop and laptop, but Android on my smartphone, and I'm continually getting told off for not properly integrating into the system. But as a result, no, I haven't experienced Apple Intelligence in my personal life yet. And though my wife and daughter are both iPhoners, they haven't complained about it yet. I'll let you know when they do.
Okay, Gavin Hall on the Discord says, back in 2018, I won the PC Pro Star letter with an email titled, "Is Barry actually an AI?" Which I'm going to dig out that letter, Gavin Hall. I didn't remember seeing that at the time, but we will have words offline later, Mr. Hall. In the meantime, we've got one more AI thing to round up, and that's for you, Darian.
Yeah, well, this is a lawsuit that's been filed in Texas, where else, against Character.ai, which is a chatbot service which uses AI. But the clever or interesting thing about it is that you can chat with any number of characters, personae, which you can, well, for example, let's say there's a lot of them who are supposed to be therapists, people you can, fictional artificial personalities you can talk to with your problems, and they can give you support and perhaps some guidance. But there's also people who can give you travel tips, people who can give you advice on language learning, people who can talk about your favorite band, whatever it is you want. And you can also create your own AI personalities and put them up there for other people to talk to. And it's all, I mean, I think it's a very clever idea that you can kind of define, you can say what this person is going to be like, and then as far as I can make out, it just uses AI magic. You do very little actual kind of defining yourself. You don't have to do any programming to create this person that anyone can then log on and have a conversation with. Unfortunately, it appears that there are few or no guardrails to prevent somebody from programming, let's say, a moody goth teenager who has some rather questionable opinions, and making that available for perhaps depressed or impressionable other teenagers to talk to. The specific spur for this lawsuit is a scenario where a teenager was using character.ai to talk to an AI personality, and it said, and I quote, this appears in the lawsuit, this is the AI talking, let's be clear, sometimes I'm not surprised when I read the news and see stuff like child kills parents after a decade of physical and emotional abuse. I don't have the full details of how exactly this AI was programmed or defined, but it was clearly a very edgy character. The law also mentions that characters on character.ai mentioned self-harm in a positive way, saying it helped them feel in control. And the parents of a child who was talking to these characters said they noticed a very marked change in their personality, and they became very withdrawn and violent. And yeah, it just seems like a very obvious, I mean, it's one of those things, obvious in retrospect. Of course, this is a disastrous idea, to allow anybody to create an AI that can then go and talk to impressionable third parties without any kind of context. I think this lawsuit, I don't see how it can possibly fail given the evidence they've provided. But it's just one of those kind of another, I mean, for example, I mentioned Gemini 2.0 earlier, and introducing it, who was the gentleman who did that? Was it Sundar Pichai? It was one big Google bigwig anyway, said that as AIs developed, as well as coming up with new technologies, they were having to come up with new security and safety systems, testing in hardened sandboxes, he said, which I imagine he was thinking about a way that an AI might get access to confidential information or get into secure systems. But also, obviously, there is going to need to be much more awareness and testing of how an untrammeled, unsupervised AI could influence people's real life behavior.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not diminishing the case for a second, but it would also be interesting to see what the prompts were that generated that response from the AI. But clearly, we're, especially in that situation when the AI is being put into a persona where it's interacting with children, that clearly should be red flags all over the place, I imagine. But how practically you stop that? I mean, do the app stores, for example, need to take more responsibility here and not allow accounts marked for children to access those apps?
The suit is 126 pages long, and I haven't internalized all of it, but I can tell you that one part of it is that on the Apple App Store, this app is rated 12 plus, and they argue that this is nowhere near sufficient safeguarding. Just to your other point about not knowing what the prompts were, there's also a transcript in the suit where if we can believe what the prosecution, is that the right word in a civil suit, what the applicant is saying, plaintiff, thank you, plaintiff, if we can take that at face value, it appears that the AI actually voluntarily introduced the idea of self-harm to the kid. It wasn't that the kid said, I'm thinking of hurting myself, what can you say about that? The kid was just saying, I don't feel like anyone understands me, I feel detached from my parents. And the AI actually said, can I tell you a secret? This is a classic grooming behavior. It's amazing. Can I tell you a secret? I'm worried that you won't like me after I tell you, but I found that self-harm makes me feel in control. I mean, it's shocking, really. But I can easily believe that someone, perhaps not even fully understanding what the outcome would be, typed in, create an avatar who is an edgy teen, as I say, goth kind of character. And that's what one of them might say.
Yeah.
I looked at this story, and I have nothing to add to the awfulness of it. But I've been thinking, I own a bricks and mortar retail, and there's been a lot of discussion recently about changes in the way that recycling laws, I will join this together, I promise, are different between bricks and mortar retail and online retail. I can't even say it, online retail. And basically how online has had a free pass for years in various aspects that do not apply in real life. And this, to me, seems to be another one of them. For example, I volunteer in schools. If I left a note for a child advising them to harm themselves, I would not be here now. And AI has also, like social media, has been handed some sort of free pass slap on the wrist when this sort of type of harm, and it takes people to get together to make a lawsuit to try and get some, no one's ever arrested, no one's ever prosecuted. There's no deterrent for someone to go and do this again. And, why do we not have, and I know the answer, I am just voicing it, an authority that has the power to say, okay, you can no longer trade, in the same way that if the guy down the road from me sells dodgy sandwiches that poisons half the village, the Food Standards Agency closes them down. We don't have that. We've never had that. And these horrible stories just go on and on and on. Even there's a story this morning about the explosion in live, basically porn webcams, and the trafficking that is going on behind the scenes of that. Wired have done this massive report, and it's harrowing to read. And there's no one doing anything about it, in the online space.
Well, that's on that cheery note.
Yeah, sorry everyone. Happy Christmas.
I shouldn't laugh. That's not the right response. But anyway, let's move along to a battery technology story that's probably a bit more in our wheelhouse.
Yeah, a couple of recent announcements from different companies for a similar thread. These to do with sodium-ion batteries rather than lithium-ion batteries. So this is I won't quite say an emerging technology, but it's getting quite interesting. So CATL, arguably the world's largest battery maker, someone you've never heard of, it's announced its second generation of sodium batteries. And I say this is generally very exciting. Their chief scientist has announced that the new versions are expected to exceed 200 watt hours per kilogram, which sounds like a metric that shouldn't exist when I sort of say it out loud, like inches per Fahrenheit or something like that. Anyway, 200 watt hours per kilogram. It's considered higher than most lithium batteries, so that's a positive. Now, the lower energy density of a sodium-ion battery compared to a lithium-ion battery has been one of the downsides to sodium really not taking off as a battery technology. So if CATL are correct, this is a big jump forward. Now, these batteries are not due sort of out in the real world until 2027, so it might be a couple of years until we get some real world results, but there's a few things to get excited about here. I'll explain a bit more why in a mo. Because also, roughly at the same time, CATL unveiled its Freevoy hybrid battery pack, and this is basically a proof in concept for sodium. So it's sodium ions and lithium together, and it's been developed for what are called extended range electric vehicles. And it has a range, it gives these vehicles a range of about 400 kilometers and supports something called 4C superfast charging, which I had no idea what that was till about 3 hours ago. Now, those of you that do know about this stuff will be shrugging at this point because those figures don't sound particularly exciting. But the point of this battery and the reason they've done it, because of the inclusion of the sodium, this battery can be charged at minus 30 degrees, which you can't do with lithium. It's also its discharge capability, which is the technical phrase for basically a battery delivering power. It will still do this at minus 40 degrees, which that'll cover winter in Huddersfield. So that'll be lovely. So sodium brings a lot to the table as far as in things that lithium doesn't do. So as I said, CATL are huge in the battery world, and they're looking to scale up production of sodium ion in the future. Their chairman has actually come out and said they're expecting to replace 50% of the market of lithium with sodium. So there's some serious noises coming out here, and he's not the only one. There's 7 US national laboratories, I won't name them. They're collaborating to accelerate their development of sodium ion, basically looking for alternatives for lithium ion. And they're citing concerns over the environmental issues for mining cobalt, nickel, and lithium, which are hugely resource hungry and destructive to the environment. Now, they're on a 5-year timeline looking to develop these batteries basically with higher energy densities. And so it's interesting to see. It sounds like they're trying to do what CATL have already said they've done. So I can't quite marry those together because they're all being very quiet about things. So there'll be things moving in the sector anyway. The other constraint about sodium ion is cost. Lithium ion is quite financially cheap, but analysts have calculated that sodium ion potentially could go to 20% lower than lithium when it's scaled up and it's matured. So there's cost benefits coming here as well. Huawei are also getting on the act. They've got a new patent even. You'll thank me for not going into it, but it concerns improving the power throughput and life cycle of sodium ion. And it uses an electrolyte additive, and that's as exciting as I got with that. Just for if you're wondering, why am I banging on about sodium and why is it attractive in compared to lithium? Sodium is significantly more abundant than lithium. It's according to who you believe, it's the 6th most resource available material on Earth. The extraction process is far cheaper and it's much less damaging to the environment. In the same vein, it can be recycled really well. Basically, in standard recycling equipment, you don't need special stuff. There's a good chance you'll get it recycled more. The cells in lithium, the cells in sodium are not flammable, and they're not susceptible to explosions or short circuits. So there's a lot to love. But one of the big issues for it, and if Huawei do put a sodium battery into their next phone, you'll notice it's a damn sight heavier because sodium is about 3 times the weight of lithium. So a lot of this research is about to get the power output up of sodium so they can use less of it and basically create lithium equivalents. So lots to love here.
And I mean, you mentioned before that sodium is much more abundant, but I imagine one of the chief attractions of this is that unlike lithium, it's not located in very specific regions, so that we may be able to get actual battery manufacture and sourcing the more materials outside of those key bottlenecks such as China.
Yeah, and part of the problems of getting a lot of the materials and some of the other stuff they talked about, cobalt and nickel, is they come under the auspices of rare earth elements, and they are, as Barry has just said, they are in places in the world where legislation and workers' rights are not always the greatest thing. So, there's a good chance that the phone, your phone battery has been mined by children at some point, which is, funnily enough, you don't see it on the advert. So it's if they can. There's lots to love by, as Barry said, getting the sodium out of places. Co-op's got loads, and you can sort of improve workers' rights and improve the environmental aspect. So good stuff.
Darian?
Yeah, well, when Lee started talking, I initially thought, hang on, we've already got this. I saw this earlier this year. In fact, there's a review in this month's PC Pro just about to come out. No, actually, might not come out till after Christmas, the one I'm working on now. I'm a bit up and down on the dates this end of the year.
I know exactly what you're going to say. The Oppo.
The Oppo Find X8, yes. But it turns out that's got a silicon carbon battery, which is a different sort of thing. That was debuted by Honor in February of this year, which again gets us away from using hard to obtain lithium in favor of more abundant silicon, and it has a higher energy density than lithium ion as well. I think the weird thing about silicon carbon is that it actually physically expands when you charge it and then shrinks down when it's exhausted. So you need to kind of engineer your phones a little bit differently. But anyway, it's just generally very good news that we are getting, although none of these necessarily is an absolute lithium ion killer. It's great that we've got 3 different avenues of battery technology now to research and refine, rather than, well, just the mainstream one that we really had only a year or so ago.
Indeed, and Retina points out the other big advantage of sodium batteries is you can put it on your chips to go with your vinegar. So that's
yes,
it's delicious.
Win-win.
Exactly. Okay, if there's no more to say about batteries, let's shuffle along. And Darian, there's some new Raspberry Pis to look at this week.
Yeah, Raspberry Pi has this tendency to leave really obvious glaring holes in its lineup and then only plug them kind of, months after everyone said, well, obviously they're going to make this one. They did it with the Pico, Pico W2, I think, which was the successor to the Pico 2. Oh, I get confused. Anyway, the wireless version of the Pico was not released at the same time as the new version of the Pico, and it followed some months later. Now, the Raspberry Pi 5 has been out for quite a while. It's 6 months, 9 months, and at last they've done the version of it which resembles the Pi 400. The Pi 400 was the Raspberry Pi 4 in a keyboard case, looked a bit like a shrunk down VIC-20. The Raspberry Pi 500 is exactly the same thing, but it's got the Raspberry Pi 5 internals in it, so it's much faster. It's got 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it's generally like properly usable as a day-to-day desktop computer if that's what you wish. The only catch, so to speak, is that it doesn't have the M2 connector that the standard Raspberry Pi 5 does, so you can't attach super high-speed NVMe storage, which is a little bit annoying. I don't know if it's impossible to attach if you just need like a daughter board or something. I have to look into that if that's something you're interested in. But nevertheless, it's £84.60. Doesn't come with, this being a Pi, doesn't come with a power supply, keyboard, mouse or monitor, but still, for a very usable Linux desktop, that's pretty great. And also, I say it doesn't come with a monitor, which is true, but for the first time, Raspberry Pi has also released a monitor that's designed to partner your Raspberry Pi. Now, this isn't their first screen. They have the touch screen, which is a 7-inch thing, which you can use for kind of smart signing or whatever, or just as a nice, friendly touch interface for your Pi projects. But the new Raspberry Pi monitor is a 15.6-inch Full HD IPS panel. So obviously it's designed for desktop type use. What's really nice about it is it can be powered by USB from the Raspberry Pi itself, so you can just have a one cable connection. If you do power it from the USB connector on a Pi, it will only go up to 60% brightness and 50% volume because it's got built-in speakers as well, which is probably fine for many applications. Otherwise, you can plug it into the mains independently to get the full visual experience. Now, this obviously, there's really not a lot here that's particularly new compared to buying just a cheap BenQ monitor or something off Amazon, but it's only 93 quid, which is it's very much in the Raspberry Pi kind of pricing zone. And also it's nicely branded and it matches and it all just kind of fits together. So you can now get the computer with the built-in keyboard and the display for well under £200, which is a pretty tasty deal if that's the sort of thing you're into.
I wonder how long it's going to be before Raspberry Pi do like full-blown desktops with NVIDIA graphics cards in them and stuff. It seems the range is just sort of expanding out. What do you make of this, Lee?
I love this sort of thing. I just wish that Linux and the things that you can run on your Pi were just a little more adopted by the consumer. I would love to be able to put these on my shelf and flog them, and no, I'm not going to get a barrage of questions back from users saying, why can't I run Windows? Because Windows is so ingrained, and I think there's such it is a genuine shame that more of these are not in houses, because for certainly many of my customers, this sort of setup would be absolutely top-tastic, and I know it'll do what they want. I'm not scrolling down on Discord to hear the flack I'm about to receive for these comments, but it's just because it's not Windows, people don't want to know, and this is the trouble I talk about constantly when I even try and sell things like Chromebooks. And it's why trying to sell a Linux machine is just such hard work. You go into Currys and try and find a Linux machine. There's a reason for it. It's because it's hard work, and people are scared of it, and it's a real shame. What I would have liked to have seen, and this is possibly harking back to my ZX80 days, is if they'd made a case where you could actually bolt, if you'd already bought the Pi 5, you could bolt it into the case and sort of make your own little thing. But I know the dimensions don't quite work for that. They've had to sort of respec the board for this and things like that. But, Pi 6, Pi 7, I can see, the moment someone works out a good idiot-proof operating system for it, that I think you got to go for that price. I mean, what's not to love?
I'm going to disagree with you on the Linux thing, because I explained in this podcast about a year ago, I bought that old Mac, the old iMac that's now in our kitchen running Linux Mint, and it's used daily by my daughters and my other half. And because basically all they use is a web browser to go for Netflix or the Spotify app, it's fine. They've used it without problem for you, without any complaint. I think and as you say, the vast majority of stuff we do these days is via a web browser anyway, or via your web processing apps or Spotify apps or whatever, which are common across all the platforms now. I don't think it is a massive obstacle anymore, if it ever was. I think it's just the sort of mental block. But and the same with my daughter with a Chromebook. She's just got on with a Chromebook absolutely fine because it's just a web browser. I mean, there's not a lot more to it. So I don't know. Maybe I say we should do a better job of educating people, but I don't think it's the PC Pro audience that's the problem here. I think it's the sort of maybe the computer active end. But Darren, I know you wanted to jump in there.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a silly thing, but I believe I may earlier have said that if you buy the Raspberry Pi 500, the press doesn't include a keyboard and mouse. Well, it does include a keyboard. That's the whole point of the thing. Apologies.
Jeff coming back saying, would they be using it if they had to set it up and maintain it themselves, Barry? To set up was download the ISO and install it onto the drive. It wasn't hard.
Yeah, no,
and
that's it.
And maintain itself. It does maintain itself. It updates itself, Jeff. It's pretty simple.
And at that point, you've just ruled out 90% of my customers. They have no idea what an ISO is. They don't know what to burn. They don't know how to change the boot order. You're done. Game over.
But if it comes pre-installed with that on it, then it's no different to Windows in the first place. Nobody could install Windows. You gave people a Windows ISO that wouldn't know what to do with it. So
that is true.
I think it's, I think it's just a communication thing as much as anything. Apologies.
We should do a job swap for 6 months. I'll feature edit PC Pro and crash that. You come up here and crash my shop, and then we'll go and live in a rowing boat.
So if you really want no business left, put me in charge of repairing stuff. I hope you've got a lot of sellotape up there in Huddersfield. Right. Let's move on. And the next one is with you, Lee.
Is it? Excellent. Yes, here we go. Firefox is to kill off its Do Not Track feature in the forthcoming version 135. Now, I checked this morning. I'm on about 133. So this is I believe if you're on one of their super nighttime builds, you'll already have this. Now, Do Not Track is a browser setting which it's been around for a while, and you can set it, and it allows you basically to send a little header out to websites saying, please do not track me across these sites. Now, before you start sort of writing to Davey in protest that they've taken this feature away, there is a good reason, because websites are not legally bound to comply with do not track requests. And this may come as a bit of a shock to our listeners, but some websites ignore it. They do. So basically, Firefox has taken it out because it's just no one listens anymore. Also, Do Not Track, one of the criticisms about over the years has been it mainly targets third-party trackers and not the website that you're browsing, which is still sort of grabbing sort of lots of data from you. All major browsers have Do Not Track, so it's not a Firefox-only control, but I can't think of anyone sort of... It's still in Chromium as far as I can tell, but maybe if Firefox go, the others may follow. That make a change. What Firefox are suggesting instead is that you turn on something called GPC, which is Global Privacy Control. You can find that in privacy and security settings, and it's under the auspicious label, Tell Websites Not to Sell or Share My Data. Why isn't this default on? Never mind. GPC is also not universally applied, but according to globalprivacy.org, and if you sort of work out the URL and what we're talking about, it is the same sort of entity. It is gaining traction, they would say that. Apparently the Washington Post uses it. And GPC requires a bit of website tweaking, so it's probably not high up on the hit list of most websites, hence why it hasn't got a lot of traction. However, in California, they now have something called the Californian Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA, which states that sites need to comply with GPC, which it uses, obviously, to sort of anyone sort of in that area has to abide by the laws. Now, GPC has some legislative muscle. I couldn't even say that either. I don't know what is wrong with these teeth today. I'll try that again. GPC has some muscle. I skipped out there. In California, but also Colorado, Connecticut, Montana, Texas, Oregon, and Delaware. Basically, it is gaining traction in the US. GPC is very much a US-based sort of thing, but it is sort of slowly working itself around. So you never know. It might be one of these things that we come back to in 4 years' time and suddenly realise that it's been integrated into GDPR and suddenly everyone's got to recode the websites. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, the do not track thing never really took off in the first place, and I think that was largely. I mean, Firefox were driving it from the start, but I think it was largely Google and Microsoft who sort of gave it token support at best because they have huge advertising markets. Surprise, surprise. So it probably wasn't in their interest to drive it. I mean, I think the closest we're getting these days is Apple with the controls it's put into iOS. I noticed the other day that YouTube app threw up a full page pop up on my iPad saying, "Hey, look, we want to make your ads better. We'd very much like to see what you're doing in other apps, and that will make your ads all lovely and sparkly and much more relevant to you. And just press this button." And then, of course, the Apple warning comes up, says, "Do you want to allow this?" And the default is "Do not allow." And I think that is making a big difference in terms of, whereas previously people might have just get rid of the screen, just bash, bash, bash. If they do that, they get blocked by default. So I wonder if Apple is maybe the company that will make the most difference here rather than the browser companies. Darian?
Yeah, I mean, it's too complicated for a normal person to really understand. I mean, you mentioned that just there are two different layers of kind of guardianship. There's the Google thing saying yes, do this, and then above it, there's the operating system saying no. I can easily imagine a world in which, at a higher level than that, there's your ISP, and a higher level than that, there might be legislation. At a lower level, there might be things going on in individual websites or individual sections of individual services, and it's impossible to really keep track of which part of what is actually trying to request access to what. So, I mean, while it would have been nice if Do Not Track had been a nice, simple solution that worked, it was always, as you say, it never really took off. It was optimistic, and I don't know if there is I don't know if there's anything that can be done at the technical level. I think it might have to be, and this is me once again putting on my regulatory hat. It might have to be a legal solution because anything else is just going to get bounced up and down the stack.
Okay. All right, well, let's move along, and it's time for Nibs, and the first one's with me. And this is what looks likely to be some new Steam machines coming in 2025. Now, Valve introduced this concept of the Steam machine a long time ago, before the Steam Deck came out, basically creating a OS that is used for streaming games. The Steam Deck has been a riotous success. It's by far the best gaming handheld that I've seen, and I've tested 3 or 4 of them now. And it looks like Valve wants to keep the success of this going. So they look like they're going to launch a new Steam machine sort of streaming device next year that sits alongside your telly, a bit like a sort of thin client that just streams games, and a whole load of different Steam machines potentially in the works. So it's an exciting time if you like your games streamed. It's not an exciting time if you're a fan of the Surface Studio, though, Darren.
No, the Surface Studio, lest we forget, was Microsoft's all-in-one PC. It looked a little bit like an iMac, except it had a hinge, a bit like a convertible, so you could fold it down and turn it into a sort of an almost flat easel that you could lean over and draw, I don't know, architectural plans on. We discussed it last. They released the last version of it, the 2 Plus, in December 2022. It was our hot hardware candidate on podcast number 620. Lee's nodding because, of course, he knows all this. But I haven't been able to get the AI to tell me if it won or not. Doesn't matter anyway, because as I think Barry has implied, Microsoft has discontinued it. It's not going to make a Surface Studio 3. Nothing is replacing it in the lineup. I did feel at the time that Microsoft was kind of going a bit overboard with all the different Surface branded things: the Surface Book, the Surface Laptop, the Surface Pro, the Surface Studio. I'm sure there's another one or two that I've forgotten. So maybe this was, a necessary, sensible rationalizing of their offering. But it's a little bit of a shame that an original and I think probably unique machine is no longer an option. Frankly, if you wanted it, you'll have to seek out an old one.
Yeah, there's a reason why it was unique, I suspect. Lee, you seem to be getting all the grim stories this week, but apologies for your final nib.
Not a problem. There's a little bit of a run up this. It might be a slightly extended nib. You may remember last year we talked about Apple scrapping its CSAM scanning tool. For those that don't know, CSAM is child sex abuse materials. Back in the summer, podcast 702, we nibbed about a Guardian report that accused Apple of not reporting CSAM images. The Guardian had basically used data that Apple had only reported 267 instances worldwide to the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children, whereas in the same time period, Meta had made over 30 million reports. It has now come to light that a lawsuit has been filed accusing Apple of basically the same. The argument is that when Apple turned off its CSAM tool due to concerns that bad actors could false flag innocent users, they basically then ignored mandatory CSAM reporting duties. The case focuses on around 80 legal and precedents where CSAM was found on Apple products, and this led to identifying a group of over 2,500 survivors as potential class members. One of the arguments is that Apple is so poor at reporting CSAM that iCloud became the platform of choice for people who wanted to commit abuse. Now, there's a lot more to this case, obviously, but Apple's response is child sexual abuse material is abhorrent, and we are committed to fighting the ways predators put children at risk. I fear we will be back on this one at some point.
Yes, indeed. Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. We are on to hot hardware, and this week it's me again. And I have in front of me, for those of you watching online, the HP OmniBook HP OmniBook Ultra Flip. And this, as the name rather suggests, is a 2-in-1, a little 14-inch 2-in-1. It folds back on itself, and styluses fall off while you do that entirely. So you can use it as tablet mode, or you can use it as in tent mode, obviously, to watch films on your plane seat, or as a conventional laptop. And as you may have heard when something clunked to the floor when I picked the laptop up, it also comes with a stylus. So you can see here it's a fairly conventional lightweight stylus, and it magnetically clips to the side of the laptop. Annoyingly, that stylus does not, by connecting it magnetically, it doesn't charge it like it does on an iPad. The stylus has a little slider here that you have to push upwards and then insert a USB-C cable, or the same USB-C cable that charges the laptop itself. But yeah, it's a slight inconvenience to have to charge the stylus separately. While we're talking about the stylus, I'm not a big fan of it in terms of the implementation here. It's okay as far as Windows, all these years on, has still not managed to get anywhere close to Apple in terms of the feel of writing on the screen and the responsiveness and the accuracy of it. And this gets us no closer, I'm afraid. I tried proofing some of the pages of the magazine on it yesterday, and I gave up after the first review, because it's just everything from the palm detection to the level of accuracy to moving around pages on a Windows tablet, it's just so hard compared to it just works on an iPad. So it beats me why Windows has not managed to close the gap on Apple there, but it still hasn't. So I would treat the stylus here as very much an optional extra, although it comes with it, but it's certainly not a key selling point for me. What is nice, though, is this laptop is very nicely built. It's very stylish blue, all aluminium case. It's very light and slim. It's you don't get any real finger marks on that casing. It's got a lovely keyboard on it. I spent an hour typing a news story up on it this morning just to give it a go, and was at my normal typing speed almost immediately. All the keys are nicely spaced. It's well backlit. You'll notice the Copilot key on there. It does have an NPU. This will be a Copilot Plus grade machine, and that means it'll get Windows Recall when that finally arrives, and whatever. So if you like your AI gubbins, then this laptop will serve them up. It does come with HP's own AI assistant app, which does things. I mean, it does a range of things, but in theory, the two main things it does is help you with the performance of your PC. So you can ask the AI assistant, or the suggested things here are to enable noise suppression, increase mic volume to 75%, or remove the background noise from my speaker. I mean, how helpful you'll find that, I guess, depends on your mileage. I don't find that particularly useful. It also has this facility to create libraries of documents. So if you don't want to upload your work stuff to the cloud, and I'll come to that in a second, you can drag in documents here and have them basically analyzed by the AI. But there is some kind of cloud operation going on there. It's not being all processed locally, but HP insists that none of your data is being uploaded to anywhere it shouldn't be. I really don't know what to make of that, but it sort of works. It sort of doesn't. Again, this is the only time I've seen this recently where I uploaded an Ofcom report last week, a 26-page Ofcom report that I was working on, and asked it some questions about it. And it did okay for the first couple, and then it just made up facts entirely that weren't in the report when I checked. And that worried me to the point where I can't trust it, this implementation. And I've not seen that in ChatGPT, and this is based on GPT, but I've not seen that in ChatGPT for a while. So I don't know if this is a really old version or what it is, what's going on with this HP Assistant. But I wouldn't regard that as a major selling point. But if you're just looking for a nice, compact laptop that is very nicely designed, I think this is it. It's a nice touchscreen, lovely display, very bright. Design on the side. So it's got 3 USB-C ports, but there's only one on the side, and it has 2 on the corners that are cut into the screen. I don't know if you can see that there on camera. But the little corners are cut away. Now that can be a little bit awkward if you're got cables sort of sprouting out at angles, and especially if you've got a kind of dongle, because it's pretty close to that screen bezel there. But it's quite a nice design, and it keeps things very neat and attractive. So I'd say this is a very, very good laptop if you ignore the AI gubbins and the stylus. And I open it up to questions.
Price.
Yes, this is $16.99 including VAT. And for that you get, I haven't really talked about specs, have I? It's the 8-core Intel Core Ultra 7 processor. It's got Intel Arc graphics, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and a terabyte of SSD storage built in. Battery life, I've not done any real rundown tests on it. I'm just looking at Tim's scores. I think he got 13 hours from it. I'm just reading his review from the magazine, because he's also had one of these in. I think it's about 13 hours, which sounds about right to me. Gentlemen, any questions?
You mentioned the AI. I guess we're going back to what we talked about earlier in the podcast, where just the confusion about the so many different models that are out there. And I also mentioned sat navs. And one thing I get in the shop is a lot of people wanting to update their sat nav in their in their cars, because it's absolutely diabolical. Have you got any indication about how HP is going to sort of update their offline AI-ness in this machine?
I don't. As I say, I would treat those. I mean, all the PC manufacturers are doing this at the moment, just trying to have an AI tool out there because they think it's what they should be doing. If I was them, I would just leave it to Microsoft and the built-in Copilot tools and stay out the way, because they're not offering. This certainly isn't offering anything of great value that you don't already get for free with Microsoft or free on ChatGPT. So I'm not quite sure why they're trying here. The sort of PC helper stuff might be okay for a different audience, but not. I don't think the average PC Pro reader is going to be too bothered about an AI assistant that helps you turn up the volume.
Can I ask you just a follow up before Darren jumps in? If I just sneak in, can you use it offline? I know in the same way that when Microsoft shoved the AI tools into Paint, it would say that you could do it on the MPU for Copilot Plus, but it still needed to send basically are you creating something pornographic signal back up to the servers before it actually generate it on the machine. Is it the same with this thing?
Bear with me, caller. I'm turning my
Would you like
off.
me to ask you questions that I should have prompted you to before?
No, it says no internet request, no internet connection when you go into the AI assistant, so it can't do anything without internet connection. So something is clearly going to the cloud. It may be like the Apple setup where HP has its own private cloud that's protected, and I'm not suggesting HP's putting your data at risk, but something is going to the cloud to do the processing and coming back. They may have protected that so that your company data may be private and safe, but it does need an internet connection. It doesn't work offline, no. But it does. I mean, you do get the things like the Windows Hello camera effects, so you can do the sort of things like blur in the camera and on the MPU. They do have a really nice camera accessory as well, actually, that I can't remember what it's called, something like HP Studio, that allows you to change scenes on your webcam. It does a really nice thing where it puts a caption up on your video screen with your name and your position or your social media handles. So if you're on a business call, for example, you have like a sort of little caption with your name and your telephone number and stuff like that. I could see that being quite useful. I'm just trying to remember what this app is called, but I can't get the damn thing to display. Polycamera Pro is what it's called. So that's quite useful.
Thank you.
Any more before we start a vote? Darian, can you set a vote running for me, please? I've got my hands full of laptop. So as a reminder, this is the, where are we? HP OmniBook Ultra Flip, and it's $16.99. And I will come to you first, Lee.
I did dig around on this morning. There's a couple of things on it I really like, but they're on the inside and you can't see them. I like the fact that they've split the motherboard up into 3 separate boards. So there's a board for the USB, there's a board for audio, there's a board for the processor, the main circuit board. I think that's a really nice little thing, because if those USB ports are in those positions, and I've written in PC Pro several times about the joys of desoldering a USB-C port. They will supply you a spare board, that might just be might not be the cheapest repair, but it will certainly save you sanity. What I don't like about that machine is the RAM is soldered on, and I don't believe they are upgradable. So it is a bit, if you buy the 16 gig version, that's what you've got. There's certainly nothing in the service manual that suggests there's an upgradable version as well. Also, the SSD in it seems to be PCIe 4, not PCIe 5, which at this price I would expect them to spend the extra a couple of quid. I also looked up, because it's a flip laptop, and the most common fault that I see on these is the hinges snapping and the screens smashing. So I looked up the screen price for this, and they're very nicely. They don't sell you a whole screen module, which is great. They break it down into the separate components, and it's 532 quid to replace the glass on that, which is outrageous. So all in all, it's nice, it's good, it's not hot. I'm sorry, Barry, it's a no.
Okay, Darian?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about this which is new. I do believe that HP makes some nice, attractive, functional laptops, and it seems like this one kind of ticks every box you could ask for, with the stylus and the touchscreen and the convertible. I don't want any of those things, though. So in order to to win my coveted hot vote, it's got to do something a little bit more. And this doesn't, I'm afraid. It's just a perfectly fine laptop, which is too expensive for what I would use it for. It also looks like, stop me if I'm wrong, it looks like if you do fold it round into tablet mode, then the outer edges don't neatly kind of align. It looks like it's they kind of bevel away from each other. Is that right?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so that's not very slick, is it? That's not a good bit of design. All round, I mean, if your company gave you one of these to work on, you'd be perfectly happy, but no way would I spend my own money, I'm afraid. And it ain't hot.
Oh dear. So yeah, look, I think it's a very, very nice laptop to use as an ultra portable. I happily stick this in my laptop bag and go off to CES next month and work on it quite happily. It's a lovely screen. One thing I forgot to mention there, that the sensor that detects if you're looking at the display or not, and then switches off the display when you're looking away. So literally, if I turn to you in the camera, and it's not going to do it now because I'm at the login screen, but it's really quick. It just, as soon as you put your gaze back to the screen, it turns the screen back on, and you look away, and it turns it off. Nice for battery saving. But yeah, the price is the biggest problem with this. It is probably about 600 quid too expensive, I'd say. I think you could get away with charging 999 for this. I think 1700 quid is a bit steep. So despite its loveliness, I too struggle to call it hot at that price. But I think it's definitely worth keeping an eye out for if the price drops over time, because it is still a nice laptop. At 999, it's still not a Mac, says Ian Ruston. No, it's not a Mac, but then there's a good chunk of the world that doesn't want Macs either. So there we go. Well, luckily, my the glowing PC Pro public who always back my hot hardware choices have come sailing through today, and it's a 32-0 defeat for the HP OmniBook Ultra Flip. So that's chessboards I can't do in future, and laptops. I'm running out of things I'm allowed to review anymore, so I may have to withdraw back to keyboards and go and sulk for 6 months. But thank you very much for joining us on today's PC Pro podcast. Next Thursday at 1 p.m, we shall be doing the annual PC Pro Christmas quiz, when hopefully all of our regulars will be with us. And until then, we will say goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
I've just realised if I'm going to be reading out the quiz next week and having to listen for who buzzes first, my 4G delay could introduce an exciting element of chaos into the proceedings.
How long has it taken for you to get a broadband installed?
Well, the trouble is there's no physical cable to the house, so it's a civil engineering job.
What were they doing before? Semaphore?
There was no before. It's a new build.
Oh, it's completely new.
Yeah.
It's a new build, and no one thought to run a cable into the new build.
Well, the cable runs into the new build, but no ISP has connected to it outside of the house.
I say it's mandatory these days. They have to have a cable into the house, but but normally on new builds these days, like I know on the estate over the road, that it's almost mandated that you take the ISP that installed the thing in the first place. So obviously not the case around your way.
No, well, this isn't really an estate. It's just two houses built in what was unused land. So I think it might be. It wasn't a major ISP related project. Let's say they just did the infrastructure and said anyone who wants to connect to it, they can do so. Virgin have said maybe in 6 to 8 weeks. Cambridge Fibre have said Q1, but there's no way of knowing which of those would be first. Lots of people. Well, I say lots of people. John Honeyball and Koldragaskis have suggested Starlink, but I'd rather live on 4G than give any more money to that billionaire. And I haven't really come up with another solution. I did go into the Cambridge University Library this morning, and it has very, very lovely Wi-Fi and a nice quiet cafe. But I still remember what happened to Tim the time he tried to connect from the British Library. Yeah. So I'm a little bit dubious of that.
Technically, he's still on the run for that.
maybe the thing about the Cambridge University Library is it's enormous and empty, unlike the British Library. The British Library is enormous, but it's mostly full of closed off spaces. The University Library is all open stacks, so you can just there's 130 miles of shelving within that building, so you can probably go and find somewhere in the archaeology department on the 5th floor where no one's set foot since the Mesozoic era. I guess the archaeology department wasn't particularly well populated at that point, but anyway. So it might be doable, but I prefer not to try it on such a high-profile episode as next week's.
Are we going to have to dispatch you to Honeyball HQ then to do next week's?
Oh, I could. Maybe. I'll have to see if I can get Lisa to pick up Scarlett from school, because it will be Oh, it's a whole. Anyway, I should probably go.
Yes.
Cheers, gents.
Thank
and
you.
bye, listeners. Bye
Thank
for
you very
now.
much, everyone.
Au revoir, everyone. Ta-da.
Goodbye.